President Obama is going to get tough on the banks. I know because he told me so. He went on 60 Minutes and he said, I did not run for office to be helping out a bunch of fat cat bankers. Ooh, that's tough talk. What's really frustrating me right now is that you've got these same banks who benefited from taxpayer assistance we are fighting tooth and nail against, who are now fighting tooth and nail against financial regulatory control. Okay, very right. And then he did his little speech that he does on YouTube and on radio, etc., over the weekend, talking about how this is an era of irresponsibility by the bankers and that they need to correct themselves. They've gambled on risky loans and complex financial products in pursuit of short-term profits and big bonuses with little regard to long-term consequences. That is exactly right. So all those parts are exactly right of President Obama. And you say, okay, he's on top of this thing. He's got it on lockdown. And in fact, he's calling in the bankers today. And he called in all of the top bankers in the country, the CEOs, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, JP Morgan, et cetera, and he said, you've been very, very bad boys. You've been really naughty. Are you going to change now? And the bankers snickered. Now, you ready for the behind-the-scenes stuff? Okay, first of all, banking executives said this is, quote, a PR stunt, and we're supposed to come in for a public spanking, and then that's it. And they say, oh, yeah, we'll make some, PR moves about how, oh, we're helping the little guy, and we sure get some investment out there, give some loans for small businesses. No, they're not going to do any of that stuff. And in fact, when you go to see what the Obama administration has decided that they're actually going to do with the bankers, here's two relevant paragraphs out of Politico. Now, Politico sometimes is a little right-leaning and they drive me crazy. So I'm perfectly aware of that. But I have not seen their sources be wrong 9 out of 10 times. When they do analysis, it's sometimes comical, right? But the White House does feed them information, okay? And if they're wrong, I'm going to be the first one to point it out to you. But listen to what they're reporting. I think they're right on this. Obama will take a measured tone with the bankers, telling them he wants to have a candid and constructive conversation and doesn't want to vilify anyone, according to administration officials. But the president will tell the banks that they have a special responsibility to help spur recovery because of the extraordinary bailout assistance they received last year. The president will acknowledge the industry concerned that regulators are overcorrecting and have become overzealous. And he'll call for a dialogue about that issue. So, what do we get there? He says, you have to acknowledge your responsibility. Well, wow. Johnny, now that's 3 cookies you ate out of the cookie jar. Acknowledge your responsibility. Okay, great. You have? Now go ahead and have at it again with the cookie jar. Take all the cookies you like. I'm not going to set any rules. Hey, listen, why do you continue to ask them for favors? And the Politico article and every article on this, Time Magazine, Associated Press, they say, well, the administration does not have much leverage. Come again? Why doesn't it have leverage? Here we go. Let's have fun. If I was the president, I'd call the same guys in and I wouldn't beg them, I wouldn't plead with them. In fact, I wouldn't have any kind of conversation where I'm asking them to do something. I'd sit them down and I said, look, here's the fun, the upside for you guys is that I'm not going to ask you to do anything. Here's the downside for you guys. I'm going to tell you what to do, okay? Now, I'm not going to tell you what kind of things that you should invest in, what kind of loans you should give, etc. I'm not interested in that. I'm a capitalist, okay? But here's what happened. I rescued your ass. And when I say I mean I as a representative of the United States taxpayers. So, in essence, we're your boss now. So here's your boss telling you something, okay? If you don't do everything I tell you in terms of opening up credit, etc., and you could argue whether that's the right policy. We'll get to that a little later, okay? Here's what I'm going to do. You know those credit default swaps you make all your money from? And the only thing you care about and the reason that you're taking all this money and not giving it out and not lending it out because you don't give a damn about actually doing loans anymore, you just want to build up capital so you could have more leverage to buy more derivatives and to trade more derivatives? Well, here's what's the fun thing that I'm going to do. I agree with Paul Volcker, former head of the Fed. I agree with George Soros, who is one of the smartest institutional investors in the world and has made billions doing this. I agree with all the top economists in the country that have been warning me about this. I agree with Warren Buffett, who calls derivatives financial weapons of mass destruction. So credit default swaps, they're done. I'm going to ban them. And then here's what would happen in the room. Absolute and utter panic. Okay? They'd be like, no. And I say, oh, no, you need Congress, and we bought Congress. You can't do it without Congress. Oh, really? I'm going to do an executive decision. I've decided it's part of my regulatory power that through whatever agency I like, the SEC, the FTC, make up 3 letters, 4 letters, take any letters you like. Okay, that agency is going to decide that this is fraudulent, useless, etc., and you don't have credit default swaps anymore. That market is done, okay? Then they say, please, what can we do for you? Please. Oh, now we're having a conversation. What can you do for me? All right, now let's talk. You don't have any leverage. Obama has all the leverage in the world that he wants. He just doesn't want to use it because this is all, as the industry executive said right from the beginning, a PR stunt. This is so that Obama can go, bad boys in public, and then turn it around to the American public and say, you see how I'm yelling at them? Oh, aren't I tough? Oh, no, I didn't represent these fat cat bankers. And then he turns around to the bankers and says, yeah, that's BS. Okay, come on. What do you need? What do you want from me? Okay, sure, yeah. Regulatory reform, I'll pretend I'm in favor of it and then gut it. How do I know? It's already happening in the House. And the guys who pushed for every loophole was the Obama administration.